Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're tuning in today because, well, we're tackling something literally almost everyone struggles with, but kinda completely misunderstands. We are decoding laziness and looking at the actual science of starting work. If you've ever found yourself just staring at a blank screen, completely unable to kick off a project, and then spent the rest of the day beating yourself up about it, yeah, This Explainer is going to be a real game changer for you. Okay, let's dive right in. Our main goal today is to radically shift your mindset away from all that self-blame and guilt and move it toward a clear, actionable, and totally scientific understanding of what's really going on.
Now, there are 4 words I really need you to let sink in right now. Ready? You are not lazy. I know, for so many of us, lazy is the automatic label we slap on ourselves the second we struggle to get things done. But what the research actually tells us is something incredibly validating. Your brain is literally just trying to protect you from discomfort. That feeling of being stuck? That super heavy resistance you feel when you finally sit down at your desk? It's not a moral failing, not at all. It's actually a biological protection mechanism. So let's take a deep breath, let go of that guilt, and unpack what's actually happening under the hood.
So, if it's not a character flaw, and if you genuinely want to get your work done, well, then this is the million-dollar question, right? Why can't you start working? Why do you suddenly find yourself doing the laundry, color coordinating your pencil cup, or just staring blankly at the wall instead of writing that proposal or studying for that big exam? To answer this, we have to completely pivot away from this whole idea of willpower and look directly at the fascinating psychology of our internal wiring.
Let's get into Section 1, the myth of laziness and your brain's operating system. It turns out, what we casually brush off as a lack of discipline is actually just your brain's biological response to effort, reward, and stress.
You see, the core evolutionary truth here is this. The human brain is specifically designed to save energy. It's an absolute efficiency machine. Your brain is basically constantly running these complex calculations in the background, weighing how hard something is going to be against what you'll actually get out of it and how much stress it'll cause. When a task feels difficult, complex, or just mentally heavy, like, say, analyzing a massive spreadsheet or writing a 10-page essay, your brain actively pushes you away from it to conserve resources. It literally sounds the alarm and goes, "Whoa, hey, this is going to burn way too much fuel. Let's do something easier instead." It is just your internal wiring doing its job to keep your energy reserves high.
In psychology, there's actually an exact term for this exact experience: cognitive effort avoidance. This is simply the brain's natural tendency to avoid tasks that require high mental effort or cause discomfort. By defining this, we can ground our entire experience in real science. When you sit down and start working and you feel that absolutely overwhelming urge to just walk away, yeah, that is cognitive effort avoidance in action. It proves, once again, that this resistance is purely biological, not some sign that you're somehow broken or lacking drive.
Moving right along to Section 2, the dopamine imbalance and the battle between instant and delayed rewards. If cognitive effort avoidance explains why we run away from hard work, dopamine explains what we run toward instead. And right now, our modern environment has created a massive imbalance in how our brains process these rewards.
We are facing a totally unprecedented imbalance today. On one hand, we have instant dopamine. Your brain is currently trained to prefer incredibly quick, low-effort rewards. You know the drill: scrolling through social media, watching those 15-second short videos, just consuming fast entertainment. These actions flood your brain with an immediate, massive dopamine hit. But on the other hand, we have delayed reward. Studying, deep work, drafting a big project. These things do not give you an instant hit of satisfaction. The payoff is hours, days, or even months away. So when you're faced with the heavy friction of staring at a blank document for a delayed reward versus the magnetic pull of your phone for an instant reward, well, your brain naturally and automatically chooses what feels easier in that exact moment. Makes total sense, right?
Which brings us to Section 3, fear disguised as laziness, and the hidden mechanics of our emotions. Because sometimes what feels exactly like laziness on the surface is actually masking some pretty deep emotional blockages. This is where we have to get really honest with ourselves and analytical about our internal stress responses.
Okay, here are the specific fears that love to masquerade as laziness. We've got the fear of failure, the fear of not being good enough, and the fear of starting something incredibly big. Think about it. If you have a huge presentation to put together or a massive coding project to debug, your brain anticipates the intense emotional pressure of potentially failing or just feeling inadequate. So to protect you from that heavy emotional pressure, your brain simply delays action. It literally pulls the emergency brake. You're not putting off the work because you're lazy, you're putting it off to completely avoid the negative emotions tied to the task itself.
So how do we fix this? That's Section 4, Your Anti-Lazy Daily Routine. This is where we translate everything we've just learned about effort, dopamine, and fear into a concrete, practical daily routine. If you want to overcome that cognitive effort avoidance, we have to outsmart the brain's biological responses using structure.
Let's map out these 3 simple but absolutely brilliant steps onto a realistic daily scenario for starting work. Step 1. Remove distractions. Because your brain craves that instant dopamine, you have to physically remove the temptation. Just put your phone in another room, close all those irrelevant tabs on your browser, and clear off your physical desk. Step 2. Set a 2 to 5 minute timer. Remember that fear of starting something big we just talked about? This step totally destroys that fear. You aren't committing to working for 4 grueling hours, you're only committing to a tiny, completely non-threatening 2 to 5 minute window. And step 3. Do the smallest action. Lower the mental effort to near zero. If you have to write a report, the smallest action is literally just opening the blank document. If you have to send a tough email, the smallest action is just typing "Dear so-and-so." By keeping the initial effort incredibly small, you completely bypass the brain's alarm system that's trying to conserve energy.
But here is perhaps the biggest trap we absolutely all fall into: waiting for motivation. Waiting to feel ready or inspired before you start your routine is a complete trick played by your brain to delay the task indefinitely. The science clearly shows us that motivation is not a prerequisite for starting work. You actually have to initiate the work, using those exact small steps we just talked about, long before the feeling of motivation ever actually arrives.
And that brings us to Section 5, Action Creates Motivation. This is a completely new philosophy that I really want you to adopt. We are officially flipping the traditional script on how human motivation actually functions. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. I'll say it again, action creates motivation, not the other way around. Write it on a sticky note, stick it right on your monitor. This is your golden mantra and honestly the core takeaway of this entire explainer. When you sit down, remove those distractions, and write just one single sentence for 2 minutes, that tiny action generates momentum. And guess what? That momentum produces a small hit of dopamine, which then creates the motivation to write the next sentence and the next. The action absolutely must come first.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. The next time you feel that heavy resistance, the next time you feel quote-unquote lazy when you really need to start working, what are you going to do? Are you going to fall back into the old habit of labeling yourself and feeling incredibly guilty? Or will you understand your brain's biology, recognize that cognitive effort avoidance, use your 2-minute routine, and actually take control? The science is incredibly clear, the tools are right there in your hands, and the choice is entirely yours. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now go ahead, set that timer, take that one small action, and just see what you can accomplish today.